Hello YouTube, Sandre here, and I'm gonna respond here to both Matt Christensen as well as the two doctors that have been making the rounds in the news lately. They own a clinic in California, I believe, and they made some very controversial statements. They argued that, hey, the mortality rate of COVID-19 is actually way lower than previously thought. It's like comparable to the flu and other types of nonsense. And we know that's not true. We have enough data now to securely say that yes, COVID-19 is more deadly than the flu. Many times more deadly, in fact. Exactly how much more deadly it is, we don't know. But at the very least, it's a lot more deadly. And we're going to go through that later. But yeah, Matt here argues that these people were, censored by YouTube when they took down their press conference from YouTube. And look, me personally, I don't think YouTube should have done that. Okay, I don't think it was the right thing of YouTube to do. Not just because I think it's wrong, just generally, but also from the standpoint of strategy, it's pretty dumb. Because that's the kind of thing that it's ammunition for these people, these deniers. But anyway, let's begin here.
A few weeks ago, I discussed how the mantra, listen to the experts, is a complete fraud. They mean, listen to the approved narrative. How do we know? Well, there's a simple test. Just provide an expert who dares question conventional wisdom, and we'll see what survives. Respect for the expertise, or commitment to the predetermined perspective. If the expertise is the top priority, well, then those screeching, listen to the experts, should gladly do just that. But if the message is the top priority, well, then listen to the experts weirdly morphs into defame the experts, discredit the experts, malign the experts, even censor the experts.
Here's the thing, though, Matt. These two doctors, they're not experts. Now, don't get me wrong, as doctors, we obviously know more about viral infections than the average person. I'll give you that much. But they're not comparable to actual virologists. Okay? I mean, look, I've studied biochemistry. I probably have comparable knowledge, if not better knowledge, of how viruses operate than they do. Okay, so I'm just saying.
It is not listen to the experts. It is listen to the narrative. YouTube CEO Susan Wiki confirmed her commitment to narrative over study and debate last week, appearing on Brian Stelter's CNN show, saying that any challenge to World Health Organization recommendations can get a video removed.
Talk about that is raised.
Yes. Yeah, and here's the thing, Matt. I just find it funny how you, because you believe that taxation is theft. You've said it multiple times in your videos. And I'm getting the impression strongly that you are an ANCAP, or at least you're leaning towards being an ANCAP. I mean, otherwise, why would you say that taxation is theft? But here's the thing. You believe that taxation is theft. And you also argue that, the free market shall not be infringed and whatever, But then, why do you object then when YouTube, which is a private company, why do you object when YouTube is doing what you would argue is their right to do? It's their company. I just think it's funny how the very same people who usually argues that on one hand, the government should stay out of the free market because, these companies, they need to be able to act on their own and blah, 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 blah. And then when these companies do something that they don't like, something that goes against, their narrative, all of a sudden, oh no, how dare this company, execute their right that I actually fundamentally believe that they have, but for some reason I don't, because, well, if they're doing something I don't like. Yeah, it's just funny to me. It's just funny to me. Now, see, my position is this. I believe strongly in free speech and free expression. There are exceptions, of course. Fraud, for instance, is not acceptable. That's not covered by free speech. So if these doctors were trying to sell something and argue that, oh, this cures, whatever, COVID-19, then they should be taken down because that's not covered by free speech. That's fraud. But them simply putting their opinion out there, and saying that, oh, this thing is not that dangerous, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't think that warrants YouTube taking them down, actually. I just don't think YouTube should take them down because of that. I do think that's covered. And, here's the thing, Matt. I believe that the government should should implement laws that protect people on the internet from companies doing this sort of thing. I don't think YouTube should be able to just willy-nilly decide that, hey, you can't be on the platform, get off and whatever. But here's the thing, Matt. You believe that they have this right. At least for the most part you do. But now when they're doing something that you don't agree with, all of a sudden, hey, YouTube, what the fuck, man? Now all of a sudden you think the YouTube needs to be stopped. It's just, you can't have your cake and eat it too. I am consistent with my beliefs here, with my standards, with my principles. You, on one hand, when companies are doing what you like, oh, the free market reigns supreme. Governments stay away. No regulations or restrictions. But when they do something on their own volition that you simply don't agree with, oh my God, how dare this company execute their right that I agree that they have. Again, Matt, it's a private company. Apparently, this goes against their terms of service. I do not believe their terms of service surpasses freedom of speech. But you do, so why are you offended? It's like, come on, man, come on.
Using authoritative information. But then we also talk about removing information that is problematic. Anything that would go against World Health Organization recommendations would be a violation of our policy. And so remove is another really important part of our policy.
Which creates a weird paradox. The World Health Organization contradicts the World Health Organization. When the WHO corrected its prior false information about no human-to-human transmission of coronavirus, was that a bannable offense? After all, correcting the record did refute WHO claims. And by the way, how did we get to the truth on that one? Was it by challenging WHO claims with evidence? If so, why would we ban that same thing now? And what do you do about government officials who dare defy the WHO gods? The WHO currently recommends against mask wearing for healthy people, but jurisdictions across the country are mandating it. Is LA Mayor Eric Garcetti banned from YouTube, or is he still free to tempt snitches with his yet-to-be-disclosed rewards? The president...
See, here's the problem, Matt. Here's the problem. Look, fundamentally, you're right when it comes to the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization definitely has a level of corruption to it. And I think anyone who's denying that at this point is just delusional. It's obvious that the World Health Organization, at least to some extent, China has way more influence than it should have because they pay so much to the World Health Organization. And they did play ball with China, which they shouldn't do. Okay, they play ball with China when it comes to Taiwan. They play ball with China when it came to delaying calling this thing a pandemic and delaying mentioning that this transmits from human to human. And also, I do think it was quite shitty by the World Health Organization for, to deny for so long that masks actually did offer protection. Now, let me just add here, masks, do they give you, the wearer, a little bit of protection? Yes, they do. But the main protection from masks is not on your side, it's on other sides. On the other side, okay? So what I mean by that is, the reason that people in Asian nations, for instance, wear masks, is not necessarily because they want to protect themselves. Because even though the mask does protect you a little bit, it doesn't protect you as much, as it protects everyone else. So it's to protect people around them that they wear the masks. Now, if everyone wore a mask, that would be essentially the same thing as you wearing it for your own safety, because then it's harder for people to infect each other. So masks do work very well to protect people if enough people are wearing them. Now, it turns out that the reason that the World Health Organization were telling people that it wasn't effective was because they wanted to be able to build up a stockpile for, people in the healthcare industry. And I understand their reasoning in, not being honest when it comes to face masks. I do understand why the World Health Organization did what they did. Because, they want to make sure that healthcare workers who need the masks the most would get their masks. But I think but I think the World Health Organization should just have been honest with people from the start. Hey, don't hoard masks. Do they offer protection? Yes. Not as much as you think, but a little bit. But they should go primarily to the people in the healthcare industry. I think that's what the World Health Organization should have done from the beginning. So look, if you want to criticize the World Health Organization, you have no gripes about it from me. I don't care. Go ahead. I don't care. But what you're missing here, Matt, is when it comes to all of this stuff that you're mentioning, that's actually provided by proper evidence. Okay? The very same scientific community that you talk shit about later on in this video, that you claim are against these scientists because they're rebels, against academia, whatever, and the doctors and the scientists in their ivory towers, that very same scientific body that you talk shit about later on in this video, it was also that scientific body, mind you, that told people, no, the World Health Organization is wrong, face masks do protect you and the people around you, and you should wear something akin to a mask at least. So I think it's very funny how you, later on in this video, are going to talk shit about all those scientists and doctors who told people that the World Health Organization is not being honest with you. I think it's funny how you talk shit about those people, that scientific body, and you're saying what you're saying right now. It's just, oh my God, the hypocrisy is just, it's overwhelming. It really is. It's disgusting. That's what it is.
President routinely undermines the World Health Organization.
Well, they've been wrong about a lot of things. They seem to be very China-centric.
If saying that isn't okay for the little guy with the tiny YouTube channel he just started yesterday, why is it okay for the president who represents him? There is no coherence here. The deference to the so-called authoritative sources sounds nice, but the secret is even the authority is routinely wrong. Nobody is always right. The only...
Yes, you're right, especially when it comes to the World Health Organization. But again, Matt, it was other scientists, it was other doctors who told people that the World Health Organization was wrong. In other words, the people that you're talking shit about, the people that you argue later on in this video, that supposedly keep these scientists down and censor them because they're, potentially speaking truth, those people that you talk shit about later on, they are the same people who told you that the World Health Organization was not being honest. And that doesn't really jive, you can't have your cake and eat it too. But do you mention any of this? Of course not, because that's the dishonest fucking hypocrite that you are. You are a dishonest hypocrite. That's what you are.
only reliable way we can arrive at the truth is to let the battle of ideas happen freely and to trust that the best ones will survive. And yet...
Yes, but here's the thing, Matt. And I know that what I'm about to say is going to sound very aristocratic, but it's fundamentally true. Not every idea is equal. That's why we have the peer review system, for instance. A scientist can't just proclaim something without evidence. They have to submit a scientific paper, and that has to go through peer review, okay? If it passes peer review, it's a different story. Then you can, actually argue something. But if it doesn't, well, too fucking bad. Your opinion then, what you're proclaiming here, just isn't valid. So, the marketplace of ideas, Matt, is not a free-for-all. It's not anarchy. In order for, the marketplace of ideas to function, you need checks and balances, just like any other economic system. I know that triggers you, but it's the truth.
Yes, it's messy. Yes, it's even scary when information quality can have life or death consequences. But what's scarier still is enforcing the dead wrong idea with an iron fist. That is the way to ensure that we're all screwed, instead of letting the individual determine his own destiny through his own best judgment. All of that.
Again, Matt, it was the scientific community that told you and me and everyone else that the World Health Organization was being dishonest. The scientific community is doing their part. They're not suppressing anyone.
That is the context for why I suspect Susan removed a viral video of two California physicians who run an urgent care clinic in Bakersfield, Drs. Dan Erickson and Artin Masihi. They held a press conference last week with local news stations explaining their interpretations of current coronavirus data and their views that the current danger is comparable to the flu.
We're going to compare this to flu and say, is this significantly different from influenza A and B? And if not, why has our response been what it is? Is the flu less dangerous than COVID? Let's look at the death rates. No, it's not. They're similar in prevalence and in death rate.
That these stay-at-home orders are not only ineffective.
When we look at people that have locked down and people that haven't locked down, we have massive data. It is not statistically significant whether you lock down or not. So why are we doing it?
But actually counterproductive because they weaken our immune systems.
Say, go into your house, clean all your counters, wear a mask, don't go outside. We develop an immune response daily to this stuff. When you take that away from me, my immune system drops. As I shelter in place, my immune system drops. You keep me there for months, it drops more.
Add these factors together and these doctors say it's time to stop trivializing our liberties.
If you're going to dance on someone's constitutional rights, you better have a good reason. You better have a really good scientific reason and not just theory.
And it's time to get back to work.
The data is showing us it's time to lift. So if we don't lift, what is the reason?
As always, I don't present these dissident doctors as the unquestionable truth. They're not...
Oh, bull fucking shit, Matt. Bull fucking shit. I know that you can do research, Matt, because I used to watch you. Back in 2015, 2016, I used to watch your videos quite often, actually. And I found that you were actually one of the better, sources on stuff because you actually did your research. I know for a fact that you know how to do research. You have no excuse here. You have no excuse here. I know you've done research on these guys. And that you found, but you won't share this knowledge, of course, with your audience because you're banking on them not doing any research. But what you found is that these two doctors are relying on non-peer-reviewed data. Do you understand that? Non-peer-reviewed. Meanwhile, I am going to show my audience here in this video, I'm going to show them peer-reviewed data. You show two doctors that make all kinds of proclamations from non-peer-reviewed data. I actually have peer-reviewed data. My dick is bigger than your dick. Period. Go fuck yourself. So no, you are, technically you're not saying that these two doctors are more trustworthy than the scientific community, but you are sure as fuck implying that very heavily. Anything else is bullshit.
Not my own Susan WikiWiki authoritative sources. I do have some questions about their statistical...
And now you're equivocating, simply calling into question these doctors', expertise, their honesty and such. You're equivocating that to basically siding with YouTube. That's a straw man, Matt. That's a straw man. Just because you criticize these two doctors and what they're doing here, that doesn't mean that you automatically, side with YouTube in taking down their press conference. I've explained before in this video, I don't think that's the right thing to do. Not just because I just don't think that's right in terms of free speech, but also it's a bad strategy. It gives these doctors and anyone like them ammunition. So, yeah.
Extrapolations, but that's beside the point. The point is, it is not listen and believe. It is listen and question. It is listen and compare and contrast to other expert opinions.
Why then, Matt, is it that in this video you don't show the peer-reviewed papers that I'm going to show my audience in response to your video here? But in your video here, you never do that. All you do is rely on these two doctors, who, for the first of all, are not experts in the field. Again, do they know more about viruses and viral infections than the average person? Of course we do. But they're not on the same level as actual virologists whose papers I'm going to show. They also rely, these two doctors, they rely on non-peer-reviewed data, while I rely on peer-reviewed data. So yeah.
It is listen and decide for yourself. And the irony is, that's exactly what these doctors are saying. They are not trying to supplant the authority.
Do you think that you guys know more than the top immunologists in the entire United States?
I'm sharing the data. I'm not saying we're right, somebody's wrong.
Dr. Fauci is a world-renowned immunologist, and a lot of the data that they originally gave us was theoretical.
They're just trying...
Bull fucking shit. Theoretical my ass. Theoretical my ass. Okay? And as I'm going to show in just a little while, you're going to realize just why these two doctors are so dishonest. Why I feel secure in saying that.
to provide their own perspective. And for that, they earned a very impressive 5 million plus views on the original YouTube post of this press conference, millions more views across posts on Facebook and other platforms. Also for that, they earned Susan's ban hammer. Sometime Monday night, the original multi-million view post of this press conference on YouTube was taken down for supposed community guidelines violation. Click on the policy here, and I don't see where it says the wrong opinions of how best to navigate the current viral outbreak are violations, but one would speculate this is an extension of...
You could argue that their video leads to more unsafety because, well, they are proclaiming stuff that simply isn't true. Now, again, let me just make this clear. I do not like that YouTube took down their press conference, okay? YouTube should not have done that. That was the wrong decision by YouTube, in my opinion. I do think that what they did here was covered by free speech. And I do think that taking down their press conference is actually bad strategy because it's going to give these deniers ammunition. However, Matt, like I said before in the beginning of this video, why are you complaining? What's that again about the government staying away from the practices of businesses? What's that about, companies should be allowed to do whatever they want with their own property? All of a sudden you don't believe in it, it seems. Very, very odd, very odd. It's almost like you're a fucking hypocrite.
Susan's new policy against defying the experts. Even if you're an expert, only Susan gets to pick which experts count. And the experts who do count made their opinion known in very coincidental timing with the removal of this video. The first person I saw on Twitter to notice the video takedown was Daniel Horowitz over at Conservative Review. This was just after 8 p.m. my time. And funny, at 7:30, the American College of Emergency Physicians and the American Academy of Emergency Medicine issued a joint statement condemning the medical misinformation of Drs. Erickson and Masihi. Okay, fine. Condemn away. They're rebutting conventional wisdom. You're free to rebut them. What specifically are they wrong about? What specifically is the medical misinformation?
Oh my God. Matt. How far you have fallen. It's not even funny. It's not even funny. You're such a fucking clown. It's not even funny. There are numerous criticisms that you can lay against these two doctors, and I'm going to go through that in just a little while. But again, you're equivocating any criticism of these doctors as, just splitting hairs, essentially. Another straw man.
You know what? Our intern couldn't be bothered to write that much, and it's much easier to smear and attribute malicious motive instead. These guys, they own their own urgent care clinics, so they're pursuing their own financial interests, and their data aren't even peer-reviewed. Okay, well, your claims here also aren't peer-reviewed, and if assumed ulterior motive...
No, Matt, their data is not peer-reviewed. That's not a false statement. That's true. Their data is not peer-reviewed. You are lying right now, Matt. We have just caught you in a lie, and I'm going to prove it.
Automatically disqualifies perspective. Why don't you go ahead and shut down that political action committee of yours that's spending millions of dollars per election cycle to further your interests, which are somehow totally different and legitimate, of course. And I don't even care what your motive is, just...
Let me ask you, Matt. Let me ask you. Do you think science is important? Of course you do. Everyone does. Now, you do realize that a lot of research is funded by tax money. Do you know why? Because those wonderful companies that you keep promoting and saying that if they ruled the world, essentially, and there was no government, controlling them or regulating them, we would live in such a wonderful, utopian world or whatever, That's the impression I get, at least, from your worldview. But you do realize that these companies don't actually spend that much money on research. Basic research is seeing a defunding crisis, actually. And so the only funding you get for basic research anymore is pretty much the government. In that sort of climate, how about you tell the companies to do their part and invest in basic research? Because right now, the only way to have any real fucking research is by the government funding it. I'm sorry, but that's just a fact. So... if the only way for companies to really get any funding, if the only way for scientists to really get any funding anymore is to go through the government, why wouldn't they, spend money on election cycles and whatever? Besides, I don't hear you complaining about this when it comes to companies using lobbyism to get their fucking reforms passed and whatever. Where's your outrage when it comes to that?
Just treat me like an adult and give me reason and evidence, not hypocritical character.
There is. And I know for a fact that you must have looked this up and you must have found it, but you're not telling us right now about it because you're being dishonest, because you're playing to an audience. You're trying to, ka-ching on your audience. You're trying to earn money from your audience, and you're banking on your audience not looking this up themselves. You really are pathetic.
Or assassination. If the case against these doctors is so obvious, please explain it. Unless, of course, you can't. Or unless we're actually playing different games here.
Oh, I can, and I will.
We're all looking to debate honestly and to find and evaluate evidence honestly, and you're actually just looking to deploy your Susan bomb to get everyone in line. We're playing a game for truth?
Again, you're implying here that Susan is somehow acting on the behalf of the scientific community. She's not. I mean, let's apply your standard here. What's your evidence? What's your evidence that scientists ordered Susan to take down their press conference? Like, can you provide the evidence, sir? Oh, you can't. You're pulling this out of your ass. Okay, I see. Very interesting.
You're playing a game for control, and I take no joy in that.
Again, you're just making an assertion here. Where's the evidence?
Cynicism, but they demonstrate their thirst for control every single time against anybody who gets in the way. It's a crucial detail to notice in this story. Susan isn't just suppressing the experts who don't count, she's also suppressing the reporters who talk to them. The video
appeal to conspiracy. What is that? That's like the third logical fallacy so far. We're about 8.5 minutes into the video, and already there's like 3 types of logical fallacies that you're just, slinging our way.
Of the press conference YouTube took down wasn't posted on the doctor's channel. It was posted on a local ABC station's channel, a channel for disseminating news. If you watch this press conference, and I recommend it.
So let me see if I get this straight, because you are one of those people, and you've done this multiple times, Matt. You are one of those people who push the narrative that YouTube is in bed with mainstream media, which I'm not saying that's wrong by any means. But wouldn't that go against them censoring an outlet in the mainstream media? I mean, hello, Matt, do you realize this doesn't jive? This does not compute, okay? Again, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Which one is it? Either YouTube is in bed with the mainstream media and promotes them, which I think there's ample evidence that they do. I agree with you on that point. But then you can't just turn around and say that YouTube then willy-nilly just starts fucking taking down, press conferences that are through the mainstream media, and still argue that there is this come on. Just think about it.
I'll post a ban-proof link in the description. You'll notice that the reporters present nearly unanimously challenge these doctors' claims. They ask tough questions, and the doctors respond. The doctors' claims aren't the only things that disappear with these video takedowns. Critical questions scrutinizing them also disappear. And so it's not just the so-called medical quackery that we're punishing. It's a free press asking questions about it.
It is medical quackery, and I can prove it. But here's the thing, Matt. You know that your audience look at that press conference, but they don't care about the critical questions that are being asked. They only care about the answers that the doctors give. Now, again, I agree with you. They should not have taken down the press conference. But I'm starting to think that the only reason that you're against them taking it down is because, well, people looked at that press conference and they were more likely to say that, oh, I guess it's proof that it's not a big deal then.
We're now punishing local news stations for bringing us varied perspectives to consider the issue.
It's part of the ABC network, which is the mainstream media, and you know it. This is not just a little fucking local TV station.
And think for ourselves. And that is because every mantra these control freaks spin, from listen to the experts to follow the science, is simply code for the common denominator. It is code for don't think for yourself. It is code for shut up and do as you're told. Very interesting that those who claim to have your best interests at heart, your health, your security, your prosperity, have no respect for your most fundamental interest, to think for yourself and to make up your own mind. If they don't respect your first interest, they aren't looking out for your best interests. Thanks as always for listening.
Well, that's a mouthful. All right, so let's get on to basically just showing why Matt is full of shit here and why these doctors are as well. So let's read this article because it sort of summarizes what I've been talking about here. Doctors Dan Erickson and Arten Masihi, co-owners of Accelerated Urgent Care, which offers Bakersfield's only private walk-in COVID-19 testing site, held a press conference on April 22nd to report their conclusions about COVID-19 test results. During the conference, broadcast on YouTube, the doctors said that 12% of Californians tested so far have been infected. Extrapolating that to the general population, they estimated that as many as 5 million Californians have likely contracted the virus. They then used the total number of COVID-19 deaths statewide, roughly 1,200 as of last week, to calculate a death rate of just 0.03%. Similar to the average death rate from the seasonal flu. Millions of cases, small amount of death, Erickson stressed repeatedly during the press conference, saying fears about the virus were overblown and questioning the need for widespread quarantine measures. But public health experts were quick to point out the major flaws in the doctor's methodology, namely that only a tiny percentage of Californians have actually been tested, a group that is more likely to test positive and is not representative of the larger population. Yes, here's the thing, you've got to keep in mind, what type of person is going to willingly get tested? People who are worried, either because they're just paranoid, or because they actually experience some of the symptoms and they want to see if they have it or not. That is, by its definition, a biased population, but these doctors don't tell you that, now do they? But public health experts were quick to debunk the doctor's findings as misguided and riddled with statistical errors, and an example of the kind of misleading information they are forced to waste precious time disputing. The doctors should never have assumed that the patients they tested who came in for walk-in COVID-19 tests or who sought urgent care for symptoms they experienced in the middle of a pandemic are representative of the general population, said Dr. Carl Bergstrom, a University of Washington biologist who specializes in infectious disease modeling. He likened their extrapolations to estimating the average height of Americans from the players on an NBA court. And most credible studies of COVID-19 death rates are far, far higher than the ones doctors presented. And I'm going to show those studies later. They've used methods that are ludicrous to get results that are completely implausible, Bergstrom said. Still, the early media coverage of the doctor's announcements went viral, digitally that is, over the weekend. The press conference video garnered more than 5 million views before YouTube removed it on Monday for violating community guidelines. Elon Musk, the Tesla founder who wants to reopen his Fremont manufacturing plant this week, yeah, he seems totally unbiased. And also, building electric cars definitely make you an authority on medical questions. Praised the doctors on Twitter to his more than 33 million followers. And on Monday night, the doctors were featured on Laura Ingram's Fox News show, reaching a huge conservative national audience. In a rare statement late Monday, the American College of Emergency Physicians and the American Academy of Emergency Medicine declared they emphatically condemn the recent opinions released by Dr. Daniel Erickson and Dr. Arten Masihi. These reckless and untested musings do not speak for medical societies and are inconsistent with current science and epidemiology regarding COVID-19. As owners of local urgent care clinics, it appears these two individuals are releasing biased, non-peer-reviewed data to advance their personal financial interests without regard for public health. And that's the thing, the data that these doctors published was non-peer-reviewed. It had not gone through peer review. What I'm going to show you in just a moment is actually peer-reviewed papers. The two doctors did not respond to CalMatter's request for comment on Monday. This pandemic has been so severely politicized in this country that evidence, no matter how poor, gets amplified enormously if it benefits one side or another, said Bergstrom. who also was one of the first experts to critique the doctor's study on Twitter. We've always hoped this crisis wouldn't come, but that if it did, we'd all be in this together. That's been a huge surprise for us all, for all of us doing infectious disease epidemiology. I can't talk today, apparently. It's amazing to have to deal with this misinformation that's being spread around for political purposes and the ways that interferes with adequate public health response. State Senator Richard Pan de Sacramento, a pediatrician who chairs the Senate Health Committee, said lawmakers who favor reopening the state had not yet cited the Bakersfield doctor's conclusions as justifications to do so, but if they did, he said, they'd be on pretty weak grounds. Other highly publicized studies of antibody test results by Stanford and USC researchers also suggesting that the virus's true spread in the community was much higher than expected and that resulting death rates were comparatively low were similarly criticized for sampling bias and for the poor reliability of the tests used. But again, politicians and media who favor reopening states right away cited them as supporting evidence. Okay, so here's the thing. No, thank you very much. So, if you remember, there was this case when it came to this pandemic. It was the cruise ship Diamond Princess. It became like a big news story and whatever, and people were, quarantined on it for a long time. And basically, this ship, however, since this was quarantined off, and since any traffic to and from the ship was heavily regulated and overseen, that ship actually became a very good thing in science. It became a controlled environment, more or less. And from this ship, we can actually learn a lot about the actual true mortality rate regarding this virus. And we can look here at a scientific paper where they actually did the math and found what is most likely a pretty close true mortality rate of COVID-19 or SARS-CoV-2. That's the actual name of the virus. But yeah, they did the math when it came to the Diamond Princess. And again, this is more or less a controlled environment. So the Diamond Princess is actually a very good place to start if you want to understand the true mortality rate of this virus. And what they found was that, let's see now, among 3,711 Diamond Princess passengers and crew, 712 had positive test results for SARS-CoV-2. Of these, 331 were asymptomatic at the time of testing. Among 308 symptomatic patients required intensive care, and 1.3%, died. Okay? So the number they found when it came to the Diamond Princess was that the mortality rate was about 1.3%. And let's just for a second assume that this is most likely the true mortality rate of COVID-19. Now, when you look at the international scale, and you divide, the total amount of deaths divided by the total amount of known cases, then you get a mortality rate, I think on a global scale of like 6% or something, and of course, naturally, the actual mortality rate is going to be, noticeably lower than that number because, the majority of people who get infected, they're not getting tested. So, what we find here with this study is that when it comes to this, controlled environment, they found a mortality rate of 1.3%. Okay, now they have done follow-up studies. So anyway, this is the CDC, and this is the follow-up study that they did. And what they found was that there's actually a big range here. So there is a lot of uncertainty when it comes to the mortality rate, the true mortality rate of COVID-19. And if we look at the previous case here with the Diamond Princess, you notice that the number they come to, as time has moved on a little bit, is that their number that they arrive to is about 0.6%. And when we look at the Chinese cases, it's around 3.5%. But yeah, no matter how they calculate the numbers, the true mortality rate that they achieve at, that they land at, depending of course on where in the world we're talking, it's somewhere between 0.25% to 3%. Now let's take the best case scenario here. Let's say that this thing only had a mortality rate of 0.25%. That is still 2.5 times more deadly than the official mortality rate of the common flu. So even if COVID-19, even in the best case scenario, it would still be 2.5 times more deadly than the official mortality rate of the flu. But keep in mind here, the true mortality rate of the flu is actually lower than 0.1%. Because again, a lot of people don't get tested when they have the flu, So we can probably, divide that 0.1% at least by 2. So we get 0.05%. In that case, 0.25% mortality is actually 5 times more deadly than the common flu. But let's stick to the official mortality rate of the flu, which is 0.1%. And in the worst case scenario, the number that they come to, and that is 3%. Now, I don't think the true mortality rate is as high as 3%, but it could be, and that's the point, it could be that high. In that case, if you do the math, you will find that that's actually 30 times more deadly than the official mortality rate of the common flu. But if we look here, for instance, when it comes to a cruise ship, they find that as more time has progressed and they get more data, the mortality rate that they gave in the beginning of 1.3%, that's actually been dropping now, and it's down to 0.6%. But keep in mind, even if this is the true mortality rate, that is still 6 times more deadly than the common flu. Officially. And keep in mind that official number of 0.1% mortality for the common flu, that's just the official mortality rate. That's not the true one either. But let's stick to that just for the argument's sake. So even when it comes to the nastiest of flus, that's only a 1/6 as deadly as this thing in one of the better case scenarios. Now, for the rest of China, excluding the Hubei province, the estimate is about 1%. So the range basically is between 0.25% to 3%. Now, if we take the average of that, if we take the average of that, that's 1.6%. It's about 1.6%. Okay? So my point here is that we can say for certain now that even in the best case scenario, this thing is definitely more deadly than the common flu. And keep in mind, this is the best case scenario. But honestly, it's pretty clear when you look at the numbers, here, but it's probably not going to land at this one, Nor do I think that this thing is as deadly as 3%. But these are the extreme ends. And anyone who's read anything about statistics will understand that the true number is going to lay somewhere in between here. In fact, probably somewhere in the middle. So I'm guessing that you could say that the true mortality rate of this thing is probably going to be closer to 1%. And if it is 1%, let's say, that is 10 times more deadly than the official mortality rate of the common flu. So that is bad. That is bad. That is very bad. And I just want to do some math here just to highlight my point here. So let's do what these people want. Let's reopen the US. Okay, let's disregard how deadly this thing is. How many people in the US would die? Okay, let's do the math. So it is believed by the CDC that as many as 60% of Americans could be infected with this thing at some point. So how many people are in the US? Let's say that you have 300 million Americans, okay? 300 million Americans that can get infected. And 60% of them get infected. And out of those 60%, let's say that 0.6%. Let's go with that number from the cruise ship. Let's say that 0.6% die. That is about 1 million people. Okay? So let's take this more so in other words, if we take this more positive number of 0.6% mortality, and let's say that about 60% of Americans get infected, and out of those 60%, 0.6% die, that is still roughly 1 million Americans. So we could say, in other words, with very high certainty, that at least around 1 million Americans would die from this thing if you just let this thing spread throughout society. And of course, you know, the true mortality rate is not going to land on this number, nor is it going to land on that one. It's definitely going to be somewhere in the middle here. But if we're lucky, it might land on this number, which is closer to that one. And that is if we are lucky, that is. So yeah, taking this thing seriously, that's the right way to go. And yeah, with that, I hope I have not made you too depressed, but I hope you understand just how dangerous this thing is. We have enough data now to say for certain that yes, this thing is more deadly than the flu. Just how much more deadly, we don't know, but it's definitely more deadly. So yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Take care. Bye!